Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shred and Soul.
I'm Shred, a.k.a. Kevin Wood.
And I'm Soul, a.k.a. Wind Hughes.
And this is Shanti. She's decided to join us for this episode.
And she hasn't joined us in quite a while, and she's a real sweetheart. You've seen some pictures of her when we've posted our posts from viewers and listeners, and she's a huge part of our family. We've had her for 14 years.
Yeah. Maybe you can show everybody your trick.
What trick?
I guess not.
Meow. You gonna talk? Meow. She's shy on the camera.
Yeah.
What can I say?
She's freezing up.
Yeah.
Anyway, she does do tricks, and she does talk. But maybe not now.
Well, today we have another interesting episode for you. We actually went to another cemetery to communicate with... Oh, yeah, Shanti, I know, and we didn't take you. She wanted to come, but we decided to leave her home. So another cemetery trip to communicate with those who are beyond this plane, and had some very amazing, some of the best results we've ever had. And we used our typical traditional devices, the Ovilus, which is just a tried and true device.
Ovilus. It's you can see this is a very common and very popular item that ghost hunters use. It will spit out words. When you ask questions, it will answer in words that it finds...
that spirits speak.
Yeah, the spirits speak. And it has other settings too. It will draw perimeters. It will actually complete sentences with a phonetic setting. So yeah, we're very fortunate to have these devices. And we have a really nice EMF detector too that helps. You know, when you feel that tingling sensation and the hair rising on your arms and the back of your neck, oftentimes when you bring out your EMF detector, you can sense or you can verify there's a change in EMF readings.
And when we walk through an area, it could be a house outside or this time in the cemetery, this will go off when it senses an increase in energy, which is what you see when we find when there are spirits around, the energy shifts, it raises. So this is a great device to have. And then the other one we have is an SLS device, and they happen to have apps where you can do that. You'll see this transcript and a few of these in the episode that's upcoming. And what happens is you can speak, spirits can speak through this, similar to the Ovilus, and this will transcribe the words they're saying. So it's called Ghost Tube, this particular one, and you can see that there's a little graph and something will speak through. Is there anyone here who wants to speak to our viewers? Any spirits around us right now that want to say hello to our viewers?
That's the one that will give you the stick figures as well, right?
Yes, there's a different setting on this that maybe you've seen in Ghost Hunters, where it'll sense a heat sensor and it'll sense things moving, and you'll see stick figures to represent a person or a different configuration of lines to represent an animal.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
An anomaly.
An anomaly.
Anomaly.
Yeah.
It can piece together the anomalies and create shapes.
In fact, one of our last episodes of ghost hunting, of our spirit communications, we had an amazing view, remember? The children's cemetery?
The children dancing in the cemetery.
Yeah, we had a group of children that appeared, so go back to a previous episode and catch that one. It's really pretty amazing. So we went to a new cemetery that we hadn't been to before, in part because it's really, really old. All of the grave sites pretty much are from the 1800s.
Yeah, I think I only saw 2 that were within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them all
old.
1800s.
Yeah.
Or at least people who were born during that time. Some of them bled into the 40s.
Only a few, though.
Yeah, but for the most part, it was a
Yeah.
pioneer cemetery. I guess you
Yeah.
could call it pioneer cemetery.
They were
People,
born in the early 1800s, died in the late 1800s, or died in the mid
and they were
1800s.
from most of them were from New York.
A lot were from New York, some were from the East Coast. I think as people migrated this way after the gold rush, we were looking up history to try and get a sense of what was life like. And you'll see in a particular person who passed in 1879, we looked up that year, and you'll see why. Because we wondered what life was like at that time, and there wasn't even electricity. We were looking at very little transportation, and it was shortly after, when was the Spanish-American War? The Civil War was only a handful of years before.
The Civil War ended in 1865.
So this was just 12 or 13 years after that.
Yeah.
Is when some of the people whose stories we're going to bring you were from that time period.
Interesting that you'd bring up electricity, and that I believe Edison's first viable incandescent light bulb came out at that same time. But we're talking rural California here in the 1870s and earlier. No such thing as electricity out this way.
Yeah, so, and what did you see the population of the U.S. was at that time period?
50 million.
50 million.
And California wasn't even a state at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is an amazing cemetery, and we'll definitely go back there because we had such powerful and consistent responses there.
Absolutely, yeah. It was definitely a hot spot. I'm not sure if it was the spot or the alignment of elements in the sky. I know we just had the meteor showers, and but anyway, we had fantastic results, and we want to share them.
Yeah, yeah, and some intrigue. You'll see at the end, there's intrigue as to try and figure out what the true story may have been.
Yeah.
So are you ready to jump into the spirit world?
Let's go.
Okay. This is a really peaceful, beautiful cemetery that we've been in, with some amazing words and communications. We'll definitely come back here. It's beautiful trees. It's very serene.
We were drawn to this mausoleum when we first got there, and this is where we had our first contact.
We noticed that this mausoleum seemed to be an entire family, and I went to the side because I had a sense that someone was there, and I asked who was here, and the answer very clearly came and said Eugene. So I said, "Hello, Eugene. What would you like to share with us?" And he said, "Let me show you." Then said, "Terrible, I told him." And then he asked, "Can you hear?" And I said, "Yes, we can hear you." He asked, "Am I dead?" I said, "Yes, you are, Eugene." And then he said, "The grave," and that's the last thing we heard. So then we went around to the front, and I looked at the door, which looked broken, to see if maybe we could pull it open. And as you could see, I took my finger in what looked like a hole and put it into the door, and at that exact moment, you can see what the obelisk, which we had going, actually said. It said, "Finger."
That was really amazing to see that on the obelisk, right when she had her finger on the door. Anyway, behind the bars of the door, you can see this awesome stained glass window reflecting the light of the day.
I was so struck by this stained glass in the back of the mausoleum because in this darkness, and obviously Eugene asking if he was dead, there was this beautiful light coming through that piece of art, which was grapes, which is the area here, it's wine country. And I wondered about this family since it was all family members in there, and Eugene, and were they in the wine industry, or what did they do, and who were they? And so many of these mausoleums and the graves here were so old, as you can see, from the 1800s, and I was just struck by that light. It was very affirming, and having these conversations with those who have departed, knowing that we're not these bodies, there's so much more to us that goes on even after the physical body goes. So I found that poignancy in the light shining through the stained glass very comforting and very affirming.
I had the ovilus on while I was walking through the graveyard, and all of a sudden this came up, poem. I looked down at the gravestone I was approaching, and what do you know? A poem, a devotion to one's mother. Mother, thou art gone to rest, and this shall be our prayer, that when we reach our journey's end, thy glory we may share.
So we walked to a new area in the cemetery until our EMF reader spiked, and we can tell that the energy had increased, and it did. And at that point, I looked around and I just said, "Who's here? Is anyone here?" And as you can see, the first word that came was loss, followed by Angela, who was answering me that that's who was there. And I said, "Hello, Angela. Nice to meet you." And she said, "I'm stuck," which was so sad to hear. And I said, "Stuck here in this realm." And she said, "I'm scared." And so I began to talk to her quickly about how she was here in this realm, in the physical planet, still here on Earth. And she said, "Where?" And I told her she was here between the worlds and that she was free to go. She could go to the spirit world. And then she said, "Let me show you." I felt that she was trying to show me where she was. And she said, "Indeed, blessed." And I again told her she could go to the spirit world. She didn't have to stay here in this realm, that she was free to go. And she said, "Weak." And I took that as maybe she was saying she didn't have the strength to leave this world. And then the next thing she said is, "I'm not sure how." And that was the last contact we had from her. So we wandered around again until we got another high EMF reading, and it brought us to the Springer family plot. And there were two tombstones here, one for Mary Springer and one for James Springer, plus another one, which was a different name called Tom Gifford. And we wandered and asked who they were, as you can see in the video clip coming up. And as I mentioned before, most of these graves were really old, from the 1800s, and so were these. Actually, James passed away in 1879, and Mary lived a bit longer. She passed away in 1893. So this represents a period of time which was pre-electricity, very much sort of the wild, wild west days, and a time when these people had very different lives than we do now. You just asked us when we weren't recording what your name was. Is it Mary? Or are you Tom? Or are you James?
Arm.
Arm. So what came next was very, very interesting. This is what appeared in this transcript. I asked where they were from. Was it here? And they said, "I'm from here." And then these words just came: failure, accident, mistress, shot. And those are things that are kind of alarming to see. And one of the things we've learned is when we see something suggesting violence, is we'll often go look for a news story, because almost every time we've done that, we have found a story explaining some tragedy that happened. So Kevin began to Google the Springers, if you can imagine, 1879, James passed away, if he could find anything. And what we found was really, really interesting.
We were lucky in that Captain Springer was a notable person of the community. He lived about 8 miles away in Bodega Corners. Obituary states, on Saturday morning last, Captain James L. Springer,
committed suicide at his residence at Bodega Corners in this county by shooting himself through the head. He left letters stating that he had committed the deed because of trouble between himself and his wife on account of some money matters. He shot himself with a large-sized Navy revolver and lived about an hour after the shot. Captain Springer was an old resident of Bodega and has been for many years a justice of the peace and postmaster at that town. He was highly respected, and his death caused shock throughout the community. He was 67 years of age and leaves a wife but no children. Well, I think that we found something very interesting here and a remarkable tragedy.
This is one of those times where I'm really touched by the story, and my heart goes to Mary and James and those around them for such a tragedy. And yet I wonder, based on the words that we were given, which I now assume probably came from Mary, that this possibly was an accident, that there was a mistress, either James had a mistress that they were arguing about, or maybe Mary was a mistress to someone, but that there may be another story beneath this. So Mary might be saying this was an accident. So did she accidentally shoot James? Because it says the word shot. And did she cover it up by saying it was a suicide? Because she knew at that time, way back then, that woman probably wouldn't have been treated very well if she shot her husband? Question mark, question mark. And then the other grave that's there of Tom Gifford. I researched him and couldn't find anything other than he was from New York, and there were a lot of Giffords that came from Ireland and then went from New York to California at that time period. Why he's in the story and in the plot, we'll never know. But it's amazing to know that our equipment picked up these words, which included shot. There isn't any way we, the machine, possibly could have known that James had been shot, potentially by Mary, or actually the suicide as the article expressed. But truly a sad story, as all of our stories can be, and I think an amazing example of how spirits can speak to us through some of these devices. And whenever we get something that suggests a story with violence, as I said, we do look it up and see if we can find something to document it. And this is an amazing example of that, don't you think?
Yeah, it's uncanny actually how we can find things that are, the equipment will indicate there's violence or an untimely death. And in these cases, we can confirm that by, luckily, in this case, finding an obituary in a archived a newspaper
Yeah.
from the Times.
Yeah, 1879 he died, and we have a copy of his obituary. Pretty amazing. And we love looking for the proof, to have the receipts for some of these voices and stories that we're hearing through our devices from these spirits who are no longer embodied.
And really, there is a complete story behind this that we'll never know. Maybe we can go back and commune with whatever's left of the energy or spirit that might be there. And now that we have something more to go on,
Yeah,
we
that'd be
can
good.
ask more pertinent questions.
Do a follow-up.
Maybe do a follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an amazing day in the cemetery. We had a good day there. A lot of information and messages.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and lots of things to think about after experiencing that.
Yeah, how do you come back after those stories? And, starting with Eugene at that mausoleum that had the beautiful stained glass. I mean, for Eugene to say, I pulled it up, am I dead? And ending with the grave. I mean, there was truly a sense there were a few words before that, that he was confused and didn't know where he was, which was interesting because the entire family was there. And so I wonder why Eugene was lost in that sense. Were the rest of them, or what's this backstory to that one?
Could you imagine being lost in limbo like that for so long? It's got to be an indescribable feeling.
Yeah, well, time isn't the same in the spirit realm, so it could be, a minute, 2
Yeah.
days. They may have just passed in the spirit
Or
realm.
it could be an emotional shadow left over that
Yeah.
doesn't really have a true being
Yeah.
attached to it.
Yeah, an imprint, that imprint where it just holds the energy of that occurrence and it repeats itself. Except when you start to have an intelligent interaction where you ask a question and they answer it, I start to feel that this isn't just an imprint, because they
That's
wouldn't interact if
a
it was
good
an
point.
imprint. Yeah, and that mausoleum was really a cool mausoleum. It was locked, and it was just mind blowing because, as you see, I came around the side of the building, and it had that iron gate, and something inside. I just wanted to test the gate to see if it was really locked, and I was playing with the lock, and that there was a hole with something in it. I thought maybe if I pressed this, it would open. And literally at the moment I pressed that, the Avila said, "Finger."
Yeah. How about that?
They were watching me and observing me and letting me know that they could see my finger, which is pretty amazing.
You know, I didn't catch any bad vibes from the place.
No, neither did
But I
I.
did have an open mind. But there was a house very close to the cemetery that looked like it was literally having its energy pulled out of it.
Yeah, it looked dead.
It looked dead, although there were a couple cars parked in the driveway.
That weren't there when we got there, so I wondered if they had a ring camera saying people pulled up, because it's a small cemetery. But the decks behind the back were crumbled, as if no one could possibly step back there. They were just disintegrating, and the house looked overgrown and in ill repair. And interesting. The house next to the cemetery appeared to have no life in it at all.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was vandalism or elements over the years and decades, centuries actually, that caused so many of the stones to be broken and shattered. And a lot of the monuments had their tops toppled. There were a couple that had large obelisks sitting on plinths that had long since fallen over
Yeah.
and were laying on the ground next to the markers.
And lots of areas in the ground that looked like they sank, 5 feet, 4 feet. And we didn't include pictures of that. But I wondered if, since they were so old, is that from the big earthquakes? What was it, 1908? The big
Yeah.
earthquake here?
Something like that.
Did the earthquake topple these down, or what it was? I don't know.
Yeah, and sitting on the top of a hill too, getting a blast of wind. I'm sure
Yeah.
it was windy.
It
when
was
we were
windy
there,
that
but
day.
It wasn't a stormy day, and I know that storms come through that area and blow very hard.
Yeah. Thinking of one interaction we had that I actually didn't include because it was really brief and really short, and I'm looking at it now, and I was asking who's there, and this voice said, "I can't talk," and then, "Where are we? Looking for me?" And a minute later it told me, "Lower your voice." Which is kind of funny. I've heard that all my life. So there are these little interactions that are, I wish you could see them all. But, there'd be a few words coming in between, and then that voice would go and the energy would fade.
Yeah.
But then we went to, is it Angela we did next, right? Looking for Angela here. And Angela was the one that said she was stuck. And that felt really sad to me because you don't see it in the transcript, and we weren't filming my holding this device. We should have, because you could hear the words. But Angela said she was stuck and she was scared, and that just broke my heart. Thinking of how many people at the point of death might feel stuck or afraid, not knowing what happened. And Angela's interaction, I could just feel it. It felt very heavy.
Yeah.
Very sad and very heavy.
Yeah. And especially sad and heavy when you think about the Springers and
Yeah.
the suicide. Definitely need to go back and maybe we can contact these spirits again and get a clearer picture, possibly what happened.
Yeah, I'd like to do more research too. Take the time to dive into Mary Springer, find out what happened, and the Tom Gifford. I didn't find much on him other than maybe a potential family tree. But the story, I'm truly convinced, as you heard me say, possibly convinced, that Mary either was someone's mistress or found out that James had a mistress, and they were in an argument, and she accidentally shot him and was letting us know it was an accident, and wrote it as a suicide because she was afraid she would go to prison. And that's just the feeling that I had. It may be completely wrong. Maybe you can write in and tell us what you imagine the true story was for James and Mary Springer.
Or maybe these people would have relatives that would be around today, even whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of sleuthing we can do.
They would know
possibly.
what happened behind the scenes of the obit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it took a while to find that. You found the info of the obituary, but you couldn't get it to open up for quite a while.
Yeah, I had to use a browser called Brave to get
Yes.
to the actual page.
Yeah, and it wasn't until hours later that we found out he'd been shot. So these words that come up, and you can see the transcript as that spirit's talking to us, to say shot is pretty startling when you find out, this man was shot, regardless of how it happened.
Yeah.
This was accurate information at the Springer grave sites
Right.
of, possibly what actually happened to these folks. And if there are any family members out there, some respect to your family for allowing us to share some of your family's history and question that.
And that's a good point too, because when we do this, we have the utmost respect for the memory and the what the other people what they've left behind, and the monuments, the grief that goes along with losing a loved one. So we take this seriously and try to share or show the utmost in respect.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're walking through history and people's lives, people's loves, people's lives, and there were so many, because this, as we said, was a cemetery of very, very old grave sites. There were so many children, and you would see a mother and a father that maybe lived into their 40s and had a row of children behind them, which maybe were 1 day old, 3 months old, 5 years old.
And some
12.
of them had multiple wives.
Yes,
not
that
at
one.
the same time.
But
one would
buried in the
die,
same plot.
Probably died in childbirth, and then managed to get another wife, and then
maybe
have
a
more
few years
children.
between.
And then she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first gravesite where I've ever seen the wives, the partners, all buried in the same plot. I thought that was interesting.
Takes kind of an open mind, I think.
Well, open spirit, and at that point, they're
Yeah.
not attached in their egos like we are here. They could move beyond that. But yeah, they were all three wives were in the same site, but we didn't address that one. That one we left alone.
It was odd too that taking the ovilus through the cemetery, you're bombarded with words, and what you want to do is find a correlation between the words that are coming through the ovilus and what you see in front of you. And sometimes it's startling, and other times you just wonder, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So I did spend a lot of time chasing down words that were coming up and looking for responses in ways. There was a couple times when the devil would come up as a word through the ovilus. So naturally I freeze in my tracks and ask, where's this coming from? Who's talking about the devil? Is the devil here? And I didn't get any farther with that, but
I said you had a poltergeist.
a poltergeist, the devil, malevolent came up multiple times. And this device does not know that you're in a graveyard.
And nor does this one. I mean, there was no way when you see it saying, am I dead, grave? There isn't any way that this could pick up that we're actually in a cemetery. So it was totally appropriate to the conversation. And you had, before we left, the ovilus said, what did it say, nation or national?
Nation.
Nation, and then you looked down and you had American flags at your feet?
Yeah.
And was it a military?
No, it
thing?
was under the directory. The cemetery had a directory with a map of where everyone was buried, and kind of like what you'd see in a mall, but very old and run down. And somebody had put some little American flags on the ground underneath it, And I was getting hits on the obelisk, and one of them said nation. And so I'm going, nation, And I looked down at my feet, and there's several little American flags flying by my feet. So,
Yeah.
coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Things like that happen with this all the time. So I'm kind of thinking non-coincidental.
Here, like for example, here's one you never know. Just two things. I went to an area and I asked who was here, and I got run now. Next sentence, don't come in. So I moved away. I did not go in.
Somebody's drama going on in
Who knows?
the ethereal plane, or a past drama that left energy, or somebody warning you that you're about to step into a portal.
Yeah, don't come in, or just saying get out of my space. This is where I live or hang out. I don't know, but I didn't intrude.
Yeah.
They said run. I didn't run. I just quickly walked the other way.
It's funny too, when we first arrived at that cemetery, we walked through the gate and immediately felt that heebie-jeebie hair
Spidey
rising,
senses.
and that energy that kind of makes you a little bit dizzy. So yeah, very active cemetery.
Very active cemetery, but also very peaceful, very pleasant. There was that one we went to, we talk about, I believe, in one of our episodes, where we said we'd never go back. That there were the two nearby each other, and one was very positive and peaceful, and the other one had very dark energy, and we truly felt that we would never go back there.
Yeah.
But this one, we would go back for sure.
Yeah, I know. Now that we've met a few people.
Yeah, we know we can go hang out with our friends again and get asked to know them a little bit better.
Yeah, hopefully not bring them home.
Yeah, and we did do, which we do, I say words of intent that as we're leaving, no one there can come with us. They don't have permission to follow us home, to be with us, that they have to stay out. And this is where they remain if they choose, but they don't come with us. And we do a protection and release when we leave, because the last thing I want is any of them coming home with us.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get in those regards.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going there to communicate, but not bring home new family members. Well, it was a very interesting trip.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us on that trip.
Yeah, comments, of course. We love your comments. Comments help our algorithm, too. It's not only that we want to hear what you say, we want to hear what you're thinking. Criticisms, praise, all of that helps us to grow. But it also helps our algorithm. The more comments, the more we will be seen by more people. So till next time, we have some exciting interviews coming up. I wish I could tell you who's going to be on our next episode, but just in case it's pushed back 2 episodes, I'm not going to mention it. But some really, really wonderful guests will be coming up.
We're having more guests.
Yes.
So yeah, and thanks again for joining us on our Ghost Adventure episode. And I guess, leave comments. Tell us if you like it or you don't, and subscribe. If you haven't seen this yet, or you haven't been a subscriber, it doesn't hurt, and it helps us with our algorithm.
Yeah, and it lets you know when we've posted, little posts in between our episodes with just information or updates, and it also lets you know when new episodes have dropped. So thank you again. We love hanging out with you, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.